In the previous videos, we started to work with ZBrush using the basic commands and the basic functions. We saw how we can manage the tools or 3D objects inside our Canva or our document here. And we focus our attention on navigation tools and really fundamentals and basic commands. And also how we can customize the view, how we can manage the view and visualize the grids or the polygons using the draw menu, and also how we can work with masks and selections, polygroups. So we are discovering the really basics of the software, which are really important for what it's going to come after. And we're going to focus more on the tool panel in this video. We saw how we can save, how we can load, how we can import, export 3D models, which are composed by faces or polygons. So you can see here the information if you roll over with your mouse on a tool that you are currently using. We saw that we can work in 2.5D or 3D, but we can also have the option to work in 2D, and we're going to see that in this video. We're going to work with different types of brushes. So you can see down here you have the simple brush. Now if you initialize, if you want to start all over, you can go to preferences, init ZBrush, so you can start all over if you think you want to have everything just as it was at the beginning. And we are, if we initialize in the draw mode, so if I start to click and drag with my mouse, with the left mouse button of my mouse, I'm gonna start to paint. But this is an hybrid between 2D paint, because we are actually working in a 2D space, but we are creating 3D looking like shapes. So it's kind of a hybrid. When we are in draw mode, so we are actually drawing with the 2.5D brushes, and also we can add 3D objects, but we are still in the 2D space. So if we click here, you can see we have a quick pick for the tools, and we have 3D meshes, which are basic 3D objects that we can use, and we can also customize a little bit. We're gonna see that later. And then we have 2.5D brushes down here at the bottom, and you have many of these to like paint or change the color, change saturation, and many more features. I'm gonna see that at the end of the video. So before we start, I wanna show you also how you can work in plain 2D. So in this case, I'm gonna go in the Z plugin menu. Here we can find a lot of applications, or let's say plugins or extra features that right now are already built in the complete version of ZBrush. One of these is Quick Sketch. So we can either click in here, we can also customize the interface and drag that command on the interface. We saw how we can customize, or we can use the preset interfaces up on the right corner there on the top. So if I move into the legacy interface, the quick sketch button is going to appear here at the top on the top toolbar. So this is another way you can use like a classic interface if you are coming from previous version of ZBrush, or if you want to access the quick sketch real quick. So if you click there, now we are in a 2D Canva. It's telling me that quick sketch setup is completed. So this means that I'm basically here with a rectangle or a plane, a 3D plane, which is also a polymesh. And we're gonna explain what polymesh is in just a minute. But essentially what I can do here with Quick Sketch is I can click that button and I can just go and sketch on this Canva, on this, let's say, paper, or, it's kind of having a painting surface that I can use. And if you click on the front face, there is going to be frontal. So it's actually 2D right now, but we are in the 3D space now. So it's now painting in 2D again, but with this three-dimensional effect. It looks like we are carving out things. So you have like a black space there, and it looks like, it doesn't look like plain 2D. It looks like 3D. But if I orbit around, I can see that this is a 2D plane with a 2D drawing on top of that. Now we can also go there on the bottom of the tool panel, and we can go to the display properties. We can double the polygon so we can see double-sided, so we can see also on the back. Otherwise the back will be invisible, but we're going to work in the front, so that's just an additional thing that you can do, or you also can avoid. So right now this is the standard setup for quick sketch, but if we want to change this a little bit, and you can see we are working there, that we can see the tool, and we can also click on this other plane 3D if you want to change the Canva, or we can get the Polymesh 3D plane. So we have a standard 3D plane. Now if we are in a standard 3D plane, we can work brand new, but you can see here we have already some setups. But if you want to work with plain brush, you need to get rid of the alpha, the texture, and you can set up the material, the color, and the two main colors. You can switch with the B key between these two main colors, and if I switch right now, I'm switching all the background color. So I'm gonna show you also how you can change that. And you can also alternate using the Alt key. So if you press the Alt key, you access these two colors that you have here. So you can switch, you can alternate, and again, we're gonna see that in just a minute. Now, what I want to show you here is that if I am in a standard plane 3D and not a Polymesh plane 3D, we cannot actually work in painting. So we need to convert the 3D plane into a Polymesh in order to work on top of that. So if I click, you can see it's going to tell me that to enable sculpting, please convert this 3D primitive to a Polymesh 3D by pressing the Make Polymesh 3D button in the tool palette. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna go in the tool palette and we're gonna click on Make Polymesh 3D. That's important because right now you are passing from a parametric plane to an editable plane. And right now I can do that like that, or I can just click on Quick Sketch and I'm gonna get into that Polymesh 3D object right away. So Quick Sketch is basically quickly setting up the workspace for you in order that you can just go there and paint around with this standard tool. So you can either use Quick Sketch or you can create a plane and convert it to make Polymesh 3D. You have these two options. So Quick Mesh, you can see you can also reset the tool there if it's too big at some point. Now let's get rid of the texture and the alpha. So alpha, it's off. Let's make the texture also off. And this is going to be the material we're going to use, which is going to be a plain white material. But you can also change that. You can change the base on which you want to work on, and also the color. So if I just click now, you can see that this is a simple brush. It's like painting in Photoshop or Krita or whatever graphic design tool, and you can change the color and paint with other colors. So these are really simple operations here. So change color, and you can see the secondary color is gray. So if I paint with the secondary color, so if I switch, you can see that it's kind of deleting. So it's looking like an eraser more than a brush because it's the same color of the background. So this is how you can paint and get rid of the paint essentially. So you can just paint on top of that with a color which is identical to the background. So you can press Alt and keep the Alt button pressed if you want to take the secondary color, and in this case I'm using this to get rid of everything, erase everything. Or you can switch colors anytime. You can also go in the color menu. Here again you have the color selector, switch. You can also select the color using RGB values, so you can directly insert the values there of the red, green, and blue. Or you can pick by clicking in the color selector, or you can just click and drag with the mouse around the interface if you want to get a color that's out there in the interface. So if I want to get the orange there, I can just select that with the color picker, and now I can use it. And I can also fill out the paper space. So just by going there, fill object, you can fill out all the space, so you can work with that as a base color. And you also have other color selector there. Now I'm gonna init ZBrush once again. So I'm gonna show you again how to work with the 3D models or tools that you have by converting them into Polymesh 3D. So you either use Sketch, as you just saw, quick sketch, and then just get rid of the alpha texture. And now we want to work with the paper. Now, if you start to draw, again, it's going to use the standard simple brush, which is something that it looks like 3D actually. You can change material, by the way. So if you want to work with different materials, go there, change material, and brush. And sorry, use the simple brush. So don't confuse the brush on the left side with the brushes on the tool palette. They are a little bit different, as you can see. This is looking more like a 3D object again. But you also have other options here. You can select, for example, this one, which is a sphere brush. And also, if you have a tablet and a pen, it's going to be better. So this looks like more interesting. Now you can paint anything in ZBrush. You can paint a character, you can paint an environment, you can do environment art, character design, or just, be creative and do an artwork that you like, essentially. So you can use 2D painting, you can use sculpting, you can use this 2.5D painting mode. But you can see right now we cannot use the brush. The brush can be used only when we are in edit mode and in a 3D space. So right now we can only use 2.5D when we are in draw mode. So we already talked about the difference about the draw mode and the edit mode and the 3D space and the 2.5D space. Now we're gonna explore the other 2.5D brushes later, because I want to show you again how you can start with simple 2D, then sculpt, and then move into 2.5D. So we are again in draw mode, and we can do just new document when we are in draw mode, or Control N to clear everything up. We don't need to like initialize or load anything. We just do Control N. And I want to use a 3D mesh as the base for my painting. I need a base, a top, a panel, a canvas on which I can paint and sculpt. Otherwise, I cannot paint and sculpt while I am in a draw mode. So I'm gonna use this primitive, which is a simple square, and it's 2D. You can hold the shift key if you want to place it like perfectly or horizontally and vertically and orthogonal fashion. And let's move into the edit object. So we need to make the switch, move from the draw mode, otherwise it's not going to show me the brushes. So go into edit, and now we can access the brushes. Now if I use the standard, and of course we need to convert in Polymesh 3D, that's another passage we need to do. So right now you can see I can sculpt. So the first thing you can do is sculpting. So it's preset for sculpting. Now everything it's gonna be set up here on the top. So you can see Z add means that I'm gonna sculpt in a positive way, like pushing or pulling the polygons out. The Z sub instead is gonna go the opposite direction. So it's gonna go the other way. And again, usually when you want to invert, you can use the Alt key, or you can just press there the option that you want. So with Z add and Z sub, we're gonna sculpt, and we're gonna do more sculpting later in the course. And you can see if you orbit around that, that's actually in a 3D. It's not a fake 3D effect, it's actually 3D. So if we go again in the display properties and do double, we can see that it's actually moving the polygons, pushing and pulling the polygons. So it's working in 3D. Again, let's do a frontal view. And now I want to go back, Control Z, and I don't want to use the sculpting right now. So these other three are for painting. So you can either paint the material plus the RGB, so the color, or just the color, so you can do just RGB, or just the material. So you have these three options. And this is the material we are using right now. So let's say that I want to paint now using RGB, standard color. So you select there, you select the color you want to use, and you can start to paint out. Now you can see it doesn't show anything because I'm painting with the white, but the white color is gonna get the material exactly as it is. So it can be used like an eraser again. So if I change that, now it's gonna be visible. And another issue we have is that we can see the pixels that which are not actually pixels. Those are the polygons. So right now we have a shape, a Canva that has two few polygons. So we need to increase the number of polygons if you want to increase the quality also, not only of the sculpt as you saw before, but also of the paint. So the more polygons you have, the more faces you have, the more quality you have. And also if you want to paint, probably you want to change material to something more white or natural than the orange material. Otherwise, the color that you're gonna work with is gonna be like mixed with the material, so it's not going to be the actual color. So use white paper, white Canva when you need to paint, and use materials if you want, of course. Now I'm going to go back and select another object. Let's select the circle. So let's paint on this circle. Now we can see now that the subdivisions are low again, and now it's more evident because we can see that on the edge. So if I activate polyframe, you can also see that this is like a single polygon. So it has a lot of faces, but it's single polygon. So to change that, we need to go to Initialize. Initialize is a way to change parametrically our object. So we can align it differently. We can change some values here, which are going to generate a different shape. And also you have subdivisions. Now to see these changes, you need to create another one. So you can see a preview there on the tool. So this is what it's gonna be. But to see it, let's do Control N and let's click and drag again. So this is gonna be the new tool with the new parameters. And again, it's gonna be parametric. So again, we can change some parameter and then click and drag and create the new shape. So this is a little bit annoying because we need to create the shape before we can actually see the changes. Now there is a workaround for that. So if I create the shape and move into edit, now I can see the changes real time. So I can change the coverage, for example, or the various radius. You can see you have like 4 different radius here, 2 for the external and 2 for the internal. So if you change those, you can see how many different shapes you can get just by playing around with the parameters. And these are the subdivisions. So you can see we have now a lot of subdivisions, but we can also increase them more and more. So we cannot see more the edge on the border. We cannot see that like straight corners. Everything looks nice. And the more polygons we will add, of course, the more quality we'll have, but also it will be heavier. Now, if I start to paint on this, and remember, you need to first of all, if it's gonna change the color on everything, just fill with a different color, and that's gonna be your base color. So just do fill object on the color panel, and then choose the color that you want to use to paint. And of course, we need to again turn this into Polymesh 3D. Now, when you turn into Polymesh 3D, you cannot change the parameters. So you are switching from a parametric object to an editable object. And remember also to deactivate the polyframe or the wireframe visualization. Otherwise, it's going to be colored with the polygroup color. So now everything is set up. I can just go there and start to paint out whatever I want to paint on this circle. And you can see the quality has improved radically here. So we don't see the polygons, and we don't see those squares there, which are not pixels. Don't mistake them for pixels. Those are actually polygons. But if we zoom enough closer, we can see also the pixels, of course, because we are working in 2D environment. Now, if you go there in Initialize, you can see I've lost all the parameters again. So when you do make Polymesh, you are switching and you cannot access those parameters again, but you have different parameters which can be used. And essentially you can work with paint and sculpt. So that's a really important passage, moving from standard to Polymesh. Now you can see here we can just change the shape. We can use a cube or a sphere or cylinders, and also we can increase the segments, or let's call it subdivisions. So just gonna regenerate, just click, you can see now they have a lot of more subdivisions. So remember that the number of phases and the number of polygons are directly connected to the quality of your work and the details that you can add. We already talked about that previously, but it's better to refresh. Now again, I can paint, I can fill the object with color, and right now we are working in 2D essentially, because we are painting on a 2D surface using 2D brush. So if I go there, I can create more copies by making more 3D polymeshes. And let's also see something more here. So you can also use in combination the paint and the sculpt. So you are not limited to use just one type of insertion. And also you can change the stroke. So this one here is the drag rect. So it's gonna, like, you can click and drag and it's gonna place just a single, let's say point of your painting. And this is spray, so this is like spraying out particles of paint. You can adjust the size, the intensity. You can see that this one here is a little bit different. You have color spray, it's going to change the color. Spray is maintaining the main color, just changing the intensity or the luminosity. And this is dragged dot. This is, you can click and drag and place that wherever you want. Now we're gonna use this later in many different examples. I'm just gonna show you again the really basic and fundamentals, but we're gonna get back into that. Now I want to create another 3D model, which is gonna be a sphere right now. Again, we are in draw mode, which means that if I continue to click and drag, it's gonna create more and more spheres. And I'm gonna show you that you can create a combination of a 3D and a 2.5D tools to create an environment or a character or just sketch, not simply in 2D but in 3D. And we're gonna get also in 2D sketching later. So I want to move now into the draw mode, and let's see what we can do here so far. So we can create sphere, we can change, and let's do edit mode, so we can now see real time the changes that we can do in the Initialize tab. So you can like sketch it and scale it in different directions, so you can resize it, and also you can create more subdivisions. And right now we are in polyframe mode activated, so we can definitely see those polygons there. And let's switch in Polymesh, and let's do a combination of sculpting and painting. So I'm gonna select a color, and I'm gonna click and drag, and let's also do Z sub. So I want to use combination of Z sub, and I'm gonna increase the intensity of that, so the strength, and also the material RGB. So right now I'm using everything: sculpting, material, color, and you can see the effect. So let's also create a mouth. So I'm gonna use the freehand. There you go. Now this is like a smile face character, but we can then like play around this. So you can see if I orbit now that I'm using a 3D surface. Now, by the way, if you hold shift, you can access the smooth command or brush, which is gonna smooth out if things gets too hard edged, or if you see too much the polygons there, you can smooth out things like that. So hold shift and click with the left mouse and smooth out the surfaces. If you continue to smooth, it's gonna eventually like flatten everything out. So I want to smooth also the mouth edges like that. And there you go. So we have another result. Now you can see if I orbit again, that's everything is in 3D. Okay, now I want to move into, instead of using ZSub to create a hole or like carving, I want to use ZAdd. In that case, I'm gonna add material like I am using clay. So I'm gonna move that material and push or pull the polygons. Now I want to make this white, so I'm gonna select the white and again paint with the ZAdd. And if you want to go in the opposite, just press the Alt key. It's gonna go in the opposite. So I can create an nicer nose, and then I can like with a smooth, I can smooth that out. But again, this is just the beginning. We're gonna get into more interesting things about sculpting later. I just want to move back by switching again into the draw mode. Now, if I switch back into draw mode, this is gonna become a tool that I can continue to place, just as we know. So I can continue to place happy faces in the Canva, or I can just move into other subjects, other 3D models. So let's add like stars around. And you can see that this is already a polymesh. The star is already a polymesh, so cannot be edited with the Initialize. Doesn't have many parameters. But if I use this kind of circular saw or engine, you can see that if I go in the Initialize, I can have other options. So depending on what tool you're selecting, you're gonna have like a bunch of different parameters. So this is the orientation. You can align Z, align X, align epsilon, or if you have another object behind, it's gonna align to the face of that object. We're gonna see that in just a minute. So I'm just creating stuff around by changing parameters. You can see that I'm changing the shape that I'm creating, so you can experiment, play around different combination of parameters. And let me see here. Okay, let's try also this. And yeah, you get the idea. So sometimes you have like really advanced setup, like the profile. You can change the profile, and you can reset everything at any time. You have a reset button, and again, you can work with the subdivisions if you want to have more or less polygons, which means quality. Now, let's get something else. And again, my suggestion is just get those one by one, play around, and see what they are all about. Now, the cylinder, you can see also can be aligned differently in different ways, and you can also change the radius, the internal radius, to create like a tube instead of a simple cylinder. And you can see that if I click there, it's snapping to the faces of the other object that's behind. So it's using the normal direction, which is the arrow that points perpendicular to the face, to place that in the orientation of that face that you are clicking on. So you can see I can play around here, build an environment which could be like a fantasy environment, or whatever could be, and just play around. But you can spend a lot of time here and create essentially everything that you do in 2D, but here in a 3D fashion. And well, let's move into the 2.5D brushes and play around with these. And we're not gonna use these later in the course because these are like self-explanatory, so you can just go there and pick one, draw around, and that's the thing that it's gonna do. So I'm just gonna do some examples. We saw and remember that you also have other options for the intensity, for the size of the drawing, for the brush. So you can see the draw size, so you can make it smaller. And also you have many options on the different type of strokes. So you can see here you have like more than the usual brush. So you have the drag again, then you have the spray again, then you can see spray looks pretty interesting there. It's gonna like spray around the entire mesh in like millions of copies. And you have this one here, line, which we didn't have previously, and this also. So it's gonna like let you click and drag lines around, so you can create like tree-like shapes. And I don't know, I think the limit here is just your fantasy. Of course, you can change color. So if I change color here, I can play around also with that, be more creative and colorful. Let's get the spray again. So you can see spraying out different spheres with different tonalities, different variation on the color. And this one also looks nice, conic. So it's kind of clicking and moving out like worm-like shapes, worms or tubes. And also this one here is going to go like straight line. Again, it's using the perpendicular arrow of the face, which is called normal, to define the direction of that. And let's see this other. Let's just have a look to all of these. Let's do a panoramic tour. So that's another one. Is ray. And let's also change color. I want to use the orange here of ZBrush. And let's use radial. This is going to create an array. So it's going to create like copies of that. And there you go. Radius. And again, play around also with the draw size, the focal shift, the intensity on the top. Okay, so just want to play around, create some of these rings of spheres. And also grid. It's interesting. You can see it's like a 2D grid instead of a circular. It's like a square grid. And let's see this last one. That is just lets you rotate the object, but this is a sphere, so it doesn't look too evident. Okay, let's continue here. Let's play around with some other of these. This one here is an eraser. So just like we erase in 2D, we can erase and create like holes in the 3D objects that we inserted, or 2.5D objects. This one here is, I think, my favorite. It's called smudge. You can see that if you go there, it's gonna like create a painting effect. I think this is like working with oil colors and like standard painting. So if you're using like a brush, in reality, it's gonna have like this effect. It's gonna like mix a little bit the colors that are there, create some nice fading and gradients. And you can see here, I can continue to do this all days. And this is where you just go there and play around hours and hours with these tools and create your, again, environment or your character or your work of art. Could be really anything. And remember that all of this stuff is going to be saved in 2D, so it's going to be like an image. It's not going to be a 3D world. It's going to be a 2.5D world. Can be used again to represent some strange world, or in this case an environment and like a character there on the middle. So it's just for like brainstorming, creativity, and things like that. Concept design. So this one here is a snake hook, by the way. And also, I think this is one of my favorites. It's gonna create like, I don't know, like corals or organic looking like shape. So with the 3D objects, we have like more mechanics effect. Here we have more organic effects. So we can play around. This one here is like air or fur. So it's called fiber brush. And we can increase again the draw size, the strength, play around also with the focal shift. So play around with all of that parameters that you can find on the top. We're gonna discover those more using the sculpting, but just don't forget those. And also, we only have this set of brush here, but these others are for like changing also the color, so you can work only with colors instead of working with the geometry or with the shape. So you have colors, you have like adjustment things like sharpen, or you can add noise, or you can blur out parts. So you can, it's like Photoshop essentially. So you have like a set of tools that will help you to generate different effects. So just go there and again play around. That's all you need to do. Take your time, expand. And this is a clone brush, by the way. So if you click Control on a point and then you click with the left mouse, it's going to just clone that around. So it's like Photoshop. Photoshop also has like a clone tool. So you can create like hills, forests, and whatever you have in mind. Now we have other like matcap and other type of brushes, but those are used for other reasons. And remember that when you're finished, go to the document. If you want to save this and continue later, you can save it as a document. So I'm just gonna go here in the document folder that I created and just save this as document, like painting. So I can remember 2D, 3D. And so I can retrieve that anytime and continue. So just go there, open, and that's it. Or if you're finished, you can export in JPEG. So, or another image format. So I'm gonna use JPEG and I'm gonna create a new folder for this. I'm gonna call this ZBrush image, or yeah, you can call it whatever you want, graphic design, and just save it. Now, when you save JPEG, you can also crop part of the image that you don't want to save. So you can use a crop left, crop top, and also crop width and height. Can define a quality, and that's going to show you the size. You can also click on adjust. You can adjust here the contrast of the red, green, and blue, the brightness again of the red, green, and blue, and the gamma, or so the overall gamma, the overall contrast, the overall brightness, or just go in the red, green, and blue. So you can do again what you usually do in also Photoshop, like color correction, things like that. And that's it. When you're ready, just say OK on the bottom of the interface, and that's going to be saved. So if you go in the folder, you will find your saved image. So that's going to be it about this 2D.5 drawing, and also 2D and 3D painting. And if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to support us, if you want to thank us, if you want to send us a little thank you, you can join us as a supporter, join the channel as a supporter. Now this video is just, smudging around and using the snake hook and all those things that we saw, just by moving into each single part of the image with the smudge, you can get like more artistic effect. And this is gonna be it for this lesson again. Thanks for watching. See you in the next lesson.